My name is Charles Durrett, and I coined the word cohousing many years ago, and with Kathryn McCamant brought it to the US. If you consider the three key components to quality of life, staying healthy, eating right, staying active, and staying connected, those notions are best very much facilitated by living in a functioning community like cohousing, I think. So I want to start off by saying that the big idea is the notion that we're going to create neighborhoods in the US that are high functioning, and we're not just going to, we have already built about 160 now in the US. Cohousing, like community itself, is not a new idea. It's very much an old idea. The difference is it used to happen very naturally. Now it has to happen very deliberately. Now it's a conscious act. I actually grew up in a small town. That's my grandmother there in the pink pants in Downeyville, California. And those towns happened just by virtue of the fact that everybody didn't drive to everywhere they went. They very much relied on proximity to accommodate many of the needs of the day, and that has subsided very much. I got involved with cohousing for lots of good reasons, lots of reasons. One of them was I wanted to live in cohousing. So once I had seen it in Europe, I said, okay, that's how I want to live, no doubt. But also because we won the Human Habitat Award from the UN in 2001. And when they called me up and said, you won, I said, no, that's impossible. They always give it to somebody from the Philippines or South Africa or something like that. And they said, no, we decided this year that the Americans are the locusts on the planet and you guys are trying to do something about it. So we got the award that year. We do consume more than we should. And I think cohousing and via cooperation does mitigate that to some extent. And then what we can manage to do with those resources is can be consequential. For example, I live in cohousing. I feel like I have a lot of excess time because I live there, because life is more convenient. Somebody else is making dinner, that makes life more convenient. Somebody else is mowing the lawn, life is more convenient. People often ask me, Chuck, what is the common denominator here? Is there any spirituality of some kind that I'm missing, etc.? And the only thing I've ever been able to come up with is that people feel like their own personal life is going to be better if they give cooperation with their neighbor the benefit of the doubt, actually. Not that we do it all the time. We do it all by consensus. The cooperation. Not too long ago, there was somebody in our community who wanted to buy a pickup truck together. We'd own it together, and you would pay commensurate to how much you used it, but we would co-own it. And lots of co-housing groups have done that. But anyway, everybody said no, and we didn't do it. Just the fact that he could ask his neighbors, could we do that, is unique to cohousing. If you go down the street of a single-family house neighborhood and you knock on people's doors and you go, hey, you want to buy a pickup together? You want to buy a pickup together? I think it'd be about 10 minutes before somebody would call the police on you. So basically the only common denominator is that people feel like they can cooperate if they can get consensus on it. We did a project in downtown Tokyo a few years ago. Tokyo, 27 million people, right? And we had 20 people at the very first workshop. A couple hundred people at the presentation, but 20 people came to the all-weekend workshop on how to get a new cohousing started in Tokyo. Marveled at the fact that all of them were from the villages far outside of Tokyo. People who had actually grown up in a place where knowing your neighbor meant something to your quality of life, basically. And it was just blew my mind that nobody from Tokyo was there, 27 million people, and all the 20 people grew up in muras, small villages in the distant islands. The eco-village movement, like in Europe, is very much uses co-housing as a key component to creating the eco-village. So we just finished a project in Chilliwack, BC, British Columbia, that is 25 acres. On that 25 acres is 33-unit intergenerational co-housing, 17 units senior co-housing, 30,000 square foot of commercial space, and a 20-acre farm. where bunches and bunches of the people who live in the co-housing actually farm there, and part of the commercial is selling the farm produce there. So, you know, I'm happy to see how, and their key organizing component was co-housing. They started with the intergenerational co-housing. And that made so much sense to me, because when you're going to try to do other things cooperatively, you know, the co-housing movement has very successfully organized around people cooperating. These are folks who simply are getting skilled and have chosen to embrace cooperation as a means of having a higher quality of life, and are accomplishing it. And so, you know, the challenge around eco-villages and anything else where people are trying to go further. You know, there's an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And these are people who want to actually take things further than they could certainly take things by themselves. Co-housing projects have a much better track record than typical developers, because, you know, you have 20 people in the room that says, you know, let's get this built. You have, you know, 30 seniors in the room that say, hey, I don't even buy green bananas anymore. Let's get this built. And it changes the complexion of the entitlement process, the approval process. So, but it's funny because, or it's not funny because so often it comes down to the creativity of the group themselves. When I asked Bill McKibben, you know, an environmentalist of consequence in this country today, when I asked him to write the foreword to our book, he said, oh, no problem. And he says, you know, Chuck, I'm not that impressed. I'm impressed, but it's not the focus of my interest that you guys save so much energy in co-housing. What amazes me is when I walk into a co-housing community, how much energy you seem to be creating. And it's not just the solar panels. It's the residents who are sitting around talking about the issues of the day and figuring out how to plug into the larger community as well as their own community. Over and over again, you hear neighbors who say, I'm so much more interested and involved in my larger neighborhood now that I live in co-housing than I was before I lived in co-housing. Because among other things, I'm aware. I'm aware of things that are, you know, why they're closing that child care center, why they're closing that senior adult center, that I didn't really have a clue of previously. I did not know how to get involved with previously, but now in the context of developing this project and living in this project, I have become very, very aware. But it's so easy as an individual to not do the right thing. It's harder when you get all of that consciousness in the room to just simply not do the right thing. The only ideology of consequence in co-housing tends to be that people feel like they will, in fact, get more out of life if they cooperate with their neighbors than if they don't. Thank you guys very much for coming. Appreciate it.